This is my dream lens, the ultimate professional zoom lens, the Sigma 28-105 f2.8, available for Sony E-mount and the L-mount, which is like Leica and Panasonic. And let me tell you, it's amazing. I'm going to show you all the test results, but first, let's talk about who this is for. 28-105 f2.8. That sounds a lot like the 24-105 lens that people use, but it's not quite as wide. 28 millimeters, it's quite a bit tighter than 24 millimeters. And using this lens, I definitely found times when I wished it would go a little bit wider. But going to 105 is significantly better than the standard professional zoom, which is the 24-70 f2.8. The fact that you can zoom to 105 instead of just 70, I found myself using that a lot. I loved the extra reach, especially for professional photographers shooting events. Myself, I carry multiple bodies, usually a camera with a 16-35 f2.8 and a second camera with a 24-70 f2.8, and then I switch between them. But there's a huge overlap between the two cameras that I have slung around my neck, right? Between 24 and 35 millimeters, I could shoot either and get the same results. What's the point of that? In those event scenarios, switching your 24-70 to a 28-105 gives you more reach without giving anything up. I'm going to compare this against Sony's 24-70 f2.8, which is kind of a benchmark. And there's some big differences because the Sigma here is about $1,500, while the Sony is $2,300. Saving yourself $800, well, that's $800 you can spend on lighting or training or another lens, things that can significantly improve your photography. So unless the Sony really proves that it's significantly better, I think a lot of people are going to be buying the Sigma. First, let's talk about the design. As we compare these two lenses, we can see the Sigma, even without the lens cap here, it's significantly bigger. It's also about 0.6 pounds heavier. And in the real world, I've been shooting with it for a couple of weeks. Around my neck, yeah, I felt that. And I definitely kind of wished I'd gone with a lighter zoom for some travel stuff. But at the same time, I shoot big wildlife lenses. I didn't mind it that much. Talking about the design, it's got features that you're accustomed to on your Sony lenses, which is a clickable, declickable aperture ring that can be locked off if you don't want it to accidentally move. It's not an internal zoom. So it is sucking air in and out, and in the long run that can lead to some dust being collected, but it does feel like it's extremely well weather sealed. And the Sony 24-70, also not an internal zoom, so if that's a problem, it's going to be a problem for both of them. I will say, with this hung around my neck, the zoom tended to eventually slide out as I was walking, and if I started at 28, it would inevitably end up at 105 like this. Sigma did thoughtfully include a little lock here to prevent it from sliding open. The only challenge I had with that is I'd lock it off and then I'd quickly pick up my camera to get a quick shot, and I'd have to remember to de-flip that and unlock it so that I could zoom. You also have programmable function buttons here. The filter size is 82 millimeters. That's standard for the Sony professional zoom, so you can continue to use your same filters. Sharpness is really important. You want to be able to crop in. So I shot test shots at 240 megapixels with my Sony a7R5 in pixel shift mode. Delayed shutter, did everything I could to get the most perfect laboratory results. So let's take a look at those. First at 28 millimeters, let's zoom in. And we can see here the Sigma actually looks a little bit sharper in the center of the frame. Well done, Sigma. Here in the corners, the Sony looks a little bit better, but they're both very good. They both have a little bit of weirdness happening, but the Sigma's is a little bit worse. At 70 millimeters, let's zoom in. The Sony looks significantly cleaner, though they're both very sharp. And as we go out to the edges, again, the Sony's a little bit sharper at the edges of the frame, but you can zoom the Sigma in further. Look how much closer 105 millimeters is than 70 millimeters. But on Sony, you always have the option of cropping. So let's zoom in and scale them to the same size. When you would need to crop from 70 millimeters on the Sony, the Sigma is going to look significantly better. For faraway subjects, 105 millimeters just straight up beats 70 millimeters. So in the overlapping range of 28 to 70, the Sony looked a tiny bit better, but it wasn't that much better. And you'll never see that big of a difference because you won't be shooting 240 megapixels on a tripod with a delayed shutter. In the real world, I don't think you're really going to see any significant difference. But you will see the difference zooming from 70 to 105 on the Sigma lens. If you're frequently isolating faraway subjects, if you like to shoot little bits of detail, that extra reach is really going to help you. On the other hand, if you're shooting wide and you need to zoom back to 24 millimeters, well, you can't do that with the Sigma. With the Sony, you could crop from 70 to 105 and still have pretty good results. But with the Sigma, if you want to go wider, well, you have to shoot a panorama, stitch together multiple pictures, or you'll just have to change lenses. So which of those works better it really depends on your style. I tested the sweet spot of the Sigma by shooting at every f-stop and comparing the sharpness, and it turns out the sweet spot is wide open. That's the sign of a really high quality lens. When you start to shut it down, diffraction, which happens at all f-stops, it decreases the sharpness. So don't feel like you have to shut this down for optimal sharpness. It'll always give you that. What about the bokeh at 70 millimeters? Here we can see the Sony's bokeh is just quite a bit smoother. The Sigma has pretty hard edges, a little bit of soap bubble bokeh, not something most people would notice or even dislike, but it's different. I brought both of these into the studio to shoot backlit portraits with our mannequin. This tells us how the lenses handle backlit situations, high contrast situations. So let's take a look at those results. Both lenses have some flaring and some bloom, but I don't really see that one is significantly better than the other. The Sony has some hard flaring over here, while the Sigma's flaring is a little bit softer, but they're both present. Nonetheless, both seem extremely high contrast. And as we zoom in, I don't see that one has significantly more chromatic aberration than the other. I'm going to call this one a tie. I tested both of these shooting a subject close up, and the results are pretty much identical. They both achieve maximum magnification at the long end, 70 millimeters or 105 millimeters. And if you need to shoot a ring shot or something, I think both will provide you equally good results. For autofocus performance, I didn't consider this to be a sports lens, so I didn't put it through a full sports test. But in day-to-day shooting, it autofocused quickly and precisely, and I never had a single casual shot with it that was out of focus. With that said, your frames per second are going to be limited on high-end bodies like the Sony A1 or the Sony A9 cameras. Typically with autofocus, they only allow third-party lenses to shoot 15 frames per second, whereas with the Sony native lenses, you can get a full 120 frames per second potentially on an A9 Mark III with continuous autofocus. So if you are shooting action, that's a good reason to get the native lens. So in summary, should you get the Sigma 28 to 105? I mean, the price is excellent. For events, professional events, absolutely, this is the one to get, pairing it with a 16 to 35 f2.8. For travel and general photography, it's a big, heavy lens. But if you're the type who tends to zoom in and isolate small details, I think this lens is a big win for you, and that's true for me. But if you're the type who likes to travel light, the Sony 24 to 70 f2.8 is probably going to be the better option if you're shooting the narrow streets of Europe where you are sitting at small tables and you are constantly zooming back to 24 millimeters. Of course, the Sony 24 to 70 f2.8 is going to be better for you. Be sure to use our links when you shop this. It's not a sponsored video, but using our links helps to support us, and that helps to bring you unbiased reviews. We're one of the only channels that has never accepted a sponsorship from a camera or lens manufacturer, and that means we can feel free to tell you the pros and minuses of everything without being influenced by concerns of being paid. But we do need your support. So please do subscribe to the channel, use our links, and shop at northrup.photo for our photography training, because improving your skills is going to do way more for your photos than buying new gear. Thanks and bye.